I think the biggest thing that I would say for the entrepreneurs who are listening in right now is that I really think that, especially during this time, there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of frustration with what's going on, kind of feeling as though a lot of things are out of your control. And I would say that in the midst of all of that, kind of take a step back and really think about who you are, right? Absent of your business, absent of your ventures or anything like that, but who you are as a person. Where are the places and the spaces where you thrive in as an individual? And how do you want to continue to thrive despite what is going on? Okay, we are live.
Yes, we are.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing amazing. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I mean, despite obviously quarantine season, but other than that, we're pushing through. So how are you?
I'm doing good, doing good. I'm blessed to be able to, still be able to work from home.
Mm-hmm.
So just doing that, taking the extra time I have from what I would have been, traveling or whatnot, just to, improve myself in different ways. I want to be able to put more content out to help people and whatnot. And that's what really made me come across your page, right? Where I think it was Boss Up. I saw that, right?
Yeah.
And how you're helping people, especially with the your brand masterclass. And so before you came on, I was just telling people that after inviting you on, I had to go and do a little research, so that I have, good questions. And I noticed, so you're 23 years old. You own a property.
I do.
You worked with the Obama White House as an intern.
I did.
You traveled the world to multiple continents, speaking at a number of different countries for your, it's a nonprofit, right?
Yeah, it's a nonprofit organization. We're based in New York, but we're national.
Okay, man, it's just amazing. It just, blows my mind. So that's why I'm excited to have you on, because not only are, the social entrepreneur, but you're also an entrepreneur because you have your own brand, right?
Yes,
Clothing brand?
Clothing brand. Yeah.
All right, perfect. So let's start with the nonprofit. What made you or the group start that? And if you could say a little bit about it and introduce yourself. You can introduce yourself again.
Of course. I'll introduce myself to your audience. So my name is Chelsea Miller. I am a social entrepreneur. I'm an activist, and all of that kind of combined has definitely impacted kind of the trajectory of the types of industries and fields that I've worked with over the past couple of years. So I interned at the Obama White House in 2016. I was working on criminal justice reform, urban economic opportunity. After leaving the White House, I first and foremost graduated from Columbia University, but two, also started a national organization focused on training women and girls of color to be leaders. And that stemmed from a lot that was going on around the Black Lives Matter movement, Say Her Name, and just realizing that a lot of conversations that were being had about activism, women of color weren't being presented at the table to have a voice, right, in movement building. And so it really came from just the need, right, in the birth of that. And so we launched in New York City, expanded once we realized just like the growing demand and different women on their college campuses who were looking to get involved. And so from that, starting it in New York City, we expanded to 20 plus college campuses. And 2020 is actually a big year for us because we're doubling our reach and actually starting our first international chapter this year. So that's super, super exciting. So on the other side of my activism and my nonprofit work, I also worked at Unilever for a period of time on social impact. And so I left Unilever last year, November. That was also the year that I purchased my first property. I bought my first house, and then went full-time as an entrepreneur with We Believe, my national organization, as well as with my clothing brand, Petronel Luxe, which I also launched March of 2019. So 2019 was a big year as far as like entrepreneurship and all of these steps that I was making. And I'm sure we'll like unpack it later in conversation, but that's me. That's what I do.
Okay, so perfect. So like going back in your life, what do you think motivated you to start this nonprofit to help women? What like really stood out to you to make you feel I want to be a part of this, or this is something that I need to do?
Absolutely. So It goes back to me, honestly, being raised by a single mother. So I tell people this all the time. I'm first generation American. So for those of you who may be first generation American, my family's from Jamaica. And so I think that plays a huge role, right, in just defining your own identity and understanding the importance of no one's going to give anything to you. You have to really work for it and create opportunities out of nothing. And so for me, it was really important, especially when I was accepted to Columbia University, which is top 5 schools in the country, to make
Yes, it
sure
is.
that it wasn't just me that had the opportunities to be able to be in these rooms, to have this platform, but how can we create this opportunity for other women and girls who are coming up behind me? And so that's really where We Believe in my national organization came from. And I always tell people that We Believe, for me, was my first step into entrepreneurship. There's a lot of misconception in the fact that nonprofits, because it's a nonprofit, that it's not profitable and all of these things. And our model specifically was created to make sure that we're a sustainable organization, we're service-based, right? All of those different elements of it, as well as having our chapters. And so I think that for me, it really just stemmed from how can I help, right? And I think that being a social entrepreneur, it really doesn't matter whether or not I continue to be in the nonprofit industry or venture off into different industries. My question when I think about building brands is always around the idea of how can you help, right? Because I think that when you're addressing a need, that's when you'll find that the business that you create or the brand that you create is a lot more sustainable.
Yes. So no, so that's good. So from what I was looking at, you really focused on more of like the civil, getting people into like politics, I'm guessing?
So
Getting more women of color into.
yeah, it's a little bit of both. So we more so focus on leadership development training. So that looks like helping you with job opportunities. That looks like connecting you to opportunities. We have a national conference that we do every year, typically held at Columbia University in New York City, where we bring together hundreds of women leaders for career development, leadership training, etc. As well as our chapters come out to that, and we partner with different brands, companies who, let's say, come for our career day that we're having for the conference, right, to recruit different women leaders from our pipeline. We work with women leaders like Tarana Burke, the creator of the Me Too movement. She was honored at one of our conferences a few years back. And so it really just looks like, how do you bridge the gap between leadership resources and opportunities and connecting women of color to that? So it looks like, again, corporate leadership, but it can also be something as I want to run for office one day, right? So we have women in politics who are part of our network, women in business, women in science. So it really runs the gamut.
Okay, so that's good. And from what it sounds like, this is a well-oiled machine, right? You're going international, you're on 20 different campuses. So one thing with people that, since I started these interviews or I've been my videos, is people always say, man, I have this idea of something I want to
Yeah.
do or whatnot, and they're scared to do it. They're scared to get started. So I'm sure when you started this nonprofit, it wasn't just like, a walk in a park to 20 campuses. So can you, like, so people that are looking, have an idea of how they want to help, like some of the, downfalls, like not downfalls, but some of the tough times you went through, how you got through it, so you could inspire someone else that might want to go down the same journey as you.
Of course. So I think that kind of just taking a step back, when I think about my entrepreneurship journey, one of the biggest things is that you really have to bet on yourself. And when I speak at a lot of different events, that's something that I emphasize a lot. I think that if you have a dream, if you have an idea, if you have something that has kind of just been bottled up in you and you're trying to really think about what to do next, to take those small steps in being able to get to that goal. But you have to understand that not everyone's always going to see the vision at first, right? And so it really is up to you to build on that vision. It really is up to you to do your homework in advance. It doesn't matter what industry that you're going in. You want to know, what are the pros and cons? What are different funding models that people are using? Who are my competitors? Who are my friends, right? Who are my friends in this industry who can be collaborators? And so I think it really just comes down to doing the initial groundwork and laying that foundation for yourself. And I always tell people that imaginary, right, is an impossible concept. Like, impossible is an imaginary concept. So the idea, right, that you can't get it done, like take yourself out of that mindset and think about what are the steps that you need to do to get there, and less about who is in the position that you want to be in, but what were the things that they did to become that person, right? And so sometimes you're always that one step away from being able to launch that business, launch that idea. And that's something that we also talk about in the Bossed Up Build Your Brand Masterclasses, where we literally spend an entire week just like unpacking people's brand ideas, talking about marketing strategies and things of that sort to really start the process of getting their brands off the ground. Because more often than not, that's really what people need, right? Is just that push to know that they're able to do it.
All right, perfect. So this is a good segue, but let me just first let everybody know I am speaking to Chelsea Miller, and I don't want to run down everything that she does, right? She does a lot. But, but one of the things that I definitely want to highlight is your Boss Up, your Build Your Brand Masterclass, right? And I think this leads definitely into it because a lot of people, I believe, they have great ideas, and with their excitement, they just run out there not prepared. You know what I'm saying? Like sometimes simple stuff, just the way they dress, who they not having a mentor or whatnot. So when they hit that wall, it just kind of, you know, discourages them. So let's talk about your master class, building your brand. So obviously, I don't want you to give away all your tips because, you know, I want them to go to your website, right?
I want them to
But
go to
what
my
can
website
you,
too.
huh?
I said I want them to go to my website too.
Exactly. So I'm actually gonna have my wife put your website up there, and I'm gonna try to pin
Okay,
it so
cool.
people could see it. But if you could speak a little bit about your master class and some tips of like, hey, what do you need to do if you're going to start a nonprofit, a business? I saw one of my friend VJ just jumped on, a realtor. What would you want them to you know, advice you would give them?
Okay, advice. So now I'm putting on my masterclass coach hat. So I would say that when you're thinking about building your brand, one of the first things that we talk about are three key strategies, and that's building a brand that's marketable, sustainable, impactful, right? And so from a marketable lens, you want to make sure that, again, tying back to something that I said earlier about what is the need that you're addressing, right? Who is in your industry right now? What are they doing right? What are they doing wrong? How can you capitalize on the gaps? Then you think about it from a sustainable aspect, right? How are you making sure that whether it's the product, the service, the business model that you are creating, that it's something that ultimately when you think about scaling your business, right, that you're able to do so in a way that's efficient and effective. And so whether that's a product-based business, so thinking about from like a clothing brand lens, right, that's your supply chain model. Thinking about influencers who are trying to grow their audience. Now it's the question of how do you sustainably grow your audience while also making sure that you're increasing engagement and reach and all of that, right? In an organic way. And so what does it look like to develop content? And so every brand has to think about a sustainability model in the very beginning stages, just because you realize that as you continue to grow, sometimes you lose touch with your audience. So you have to figure out how to blend the two. And then the third piece that we talk about is impact. And this ties into the marketability, this ties into sustainability, and impact is really important because, again, if you're creating a need within your industry, and if you're doing so in a way that's reaching your audience, right, understanding who your audience is, understanding your user profiles that you're trying to reach, what that looks like, then it's a lot easier to continue to create brands and products that ultimately impact and just make your customer base just experiences a lot easier. And so we unpack all of that. Another thing that we talk about is the importance of really understanding some of the key fundamentals of marketing, right? So building scarcity, right? What does that look like? Giving a limit on how many people are able to purchase a product, giving a limit on how many products are available to purchase as far as like merchandise is concerned. And then there's that element of it, right, where you want to make sure that from a social proof lens that you're continuing to market your brand in a way that really is showing how the customer experience looks like. And so even if you go onto my clothing brands page, you'll see a lot of unboxing videos. You'll see a lot of customer posts that's just content that your customers create for you that you can use to leverage and bring in more customers. And so there's a lot of different elements to marketing that I think sometimes that people kind of overthink it, right? And it can be a lot simpler if you think about your own experiences when it comes to interacting with brands, and how the best brands that do it right are the ones who are able to understand your own experience as an individual and tie it into their marketing strategies, right? And so I always use like Dove and the importance of like girls empowerment, right? And pairing the two. You have brands like Vaseline that talk about healing. And so really connecting it together to like the mission as well as the experience of the customer. And then the last thing I would say that we also talk about is building and developing your team. So it doesn't matter what brand you have, what industry you're in, it's really important to recognize the fact that branding is a full contact sport. You can't do it all yourself. And so you want to make sure that at least in the very beginning stages that you're identifying all of the key things that you need to get done and who may be best suited to do that. Sometimes it looks like hiring contractors. Other time it looks like having an intern. Sometimes it looks like having a co-founder, right? And so there's so many different ways as far as workflow is concerned to make sure that you're tackling the things that you have on your to-do list. Make sure your to-do list isn't anything more than about 5 to 7 key elements of how to scale and grow your brand and just hit the ground running. And something that we spoke about earlier, right? You have to do that research before you can hit the ground, but it's possible, it's doable. The execution piece is so, so important.
Wow, I need y'all to give her a lot of hearts because that was amazing. That was amazing. No, no,
So
because
that
you
was
actually,
in like a 2-minute rundown, but yeah.
yeah, exactly. So once again, I'm speaking to Chelsea Miller. She has a brand masterclass. You want to? I pinned her website at the bottom. You definitely want to go to our website to get more information. And this is not just coming from a lot of times. What I notice when I'm doing this is a lot of times people doing this are coming from a spot where they're like, hey, let me just do a brand masterclass. No, she worked for the Obama, White House. She started a nonprofit. She has a clothing brand. So she's someone that knows what she is talking about. So definitely go to her website. But you said something that maybe it just might be for me, right? But
Yeah.
scarcity, just the amount you sell, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that,
Scarcity.
huh?
I said I love scarcity. So it's two pieces. It's the scarcity element, but it's also urgency, right? So giving your customers a deadline on when it's time to purchase things. If there's a sign up form, letting people know that this is the last date, right, for things to be turned into. And so I think that it's really important to kind of understand, again, the user experience. There's so many things that every single day, especially now when so many people are on digital platforms, that they're being bombarded consistently with information. A lot of times people will save an ad thinking that there's time to return to it for the simple fact that you didn't give them a deadline on when they should act on that ad, right? What is the action item that you're asking them for? What is the call to action? And so it really helps when you let people know, okay, there's limited slots, closes in 2 days, right, et cetera, as a way to build momentum behind your brand so that people know that this is something that has to get done urgently. And I will use the example of with Petronel Luxe, there's a lot of different ads that we run throughout the year. And oftentimes when people click on our ad, for instance, like be a brand ambassador, within 24 hours, they're purchasing an item. And they're purchasing an item for the simple fact that we have urgency and scarcity mechanisms in place when it's time for us to put out our ads, when we engage with our customers, that they know that this is something that you should get ahead of. Why? Because there's only maybe 3 items left in the size that you want, or there's limited slots available for ambassadors this year. And so there are so many different ways to really grow and scale your brand in a way that's, one, authentic, of course, first and foremost. Like, don't say there's only 2 slots left if there's really 50. But again, just making sure that people are aware of the value of your product and the best way to engage with it in the time that also works with you as an entrepreneur, right? Because you don't want to be sitting around for 2-3 months waiting for someone to take action on engaging with your brand for the simple fact that you didn't give them a when and you didn't give them a why, right? And so making sure that you're able to do that in a cohesive way and in a marketable way where people are able to really tap into that.
Okay, that's amazing. Someone asked, like, so when you go into Amazon, or I think it was Wayfair, when you see only 8 left, is that true?
I mean, honestly, it depends. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's again, like a social foolproof type like timer that's attached to the system in place where every time it goes from like 8 to 1 it resets, right? So there's things like that that brands and different companies have in place, but sometimes it's honestly true, like there's 10 slots left, there's 10 slots left, right? It's non-negotiable, there's no extension to it. And so for the most part, as a customer, though, you don't necessarily think about that. Like, oh, there's a chance that they may be lying. I'll go back.
Nah, you don't want to gamble.
You want to make sure that you're one of the 8 that gets the product, right?
Exactly.
So things like that really do make a difference when you're thinking about building out content and marketing your brand.
Yeah. So I remember when I was in college, I was a part of a promotion company. Promotion company's still there, but in our advertisement, people were like, "Oh, you're lying! Like, you know, that girl's not gonna be there." And I used to ask them, I'm like, "Do you think LeBron James is driving Kia?" You know what I'm saying? Or all the products that you see people put up there. You know what I'm saying? It's all about marketing. So you could do the same. So that's great. So that's great. So what would be 1 or 2 things that when people join your brand masterclass that you would say is the main, or let's just say 1, because I want them to go to your website, you know, that you see like, man, this one thing that people need to work on always keeps coming back. Like what's one thing that you like, man, this is one thing that, hey, this is something that people need to know because every time they come to my class, they're not thinking about this.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think that it really comes down to like branding fundamentals. A lot of times people have these really great ideas, but they don't know how it connects to other people, right? So in the sense that you have this really incredible idea for building a, I'll say, clothing brand, and you have the idea for building the clothing brand, and it's something that you're really passionate about, but when it comes to storytelling and telling the story of your brand and business, people have a very difficult time doing that. And I think that it's important to recognize that in this day and age, people are supporting either the founder of a brand or they're supporting the mission, right, of that brand. And more often than not, and you'll especially see with even these big companies, now a lot of B corporations are being formed, social impact initiatives are coming out of these Fortune 500 brands. Why? Because people like brands with purpose. And so I think that it's important that when you're creating the story of your brand, that you keep in mind what is the purpose and how can other people buy into that, support that. A lot of the times customers buy from my clothing brand because they see it as being able to be a part of the journey of Petronelle Lux, which is the name of my clothing brand, being a part of the story of redefining what a boss babe looks like and what she wears and how she dresses. And when they put on the clothes, they feel empowered and feel like they too are boss babes, they too are unstoppable. And so I think it's really important to recognize that it doesn't matter what type of brand you are building or developing, that brand story and your ability to tell it to your audience is so important. And I think a lot of times people undermine their story and the power of their story and tying it to their brand. But if you don't, it's kind of robotic, right? It's like, okay, this brand exists, but there's so many others out there like it. And so the same way how you have that cover letter when you submit your resume, right? There's a reason for that. It's to be able to tell your story. And so before you put your brand out there for people to connect with it, make sure that you have that story really ironed out, because guess what? People are going to buy into the story more so than the product. The product is going to sell regardless.
Okay. Wow. No, thank you. So basically a story and that is true. I believe I took a course and they were mentioning, I forget the company, but they were telling people for every shoe you buy or sneakers,
maybe.
Huh?
Maybe Tom's. Are you talking about Tom's?
It may be that they give it to someone like, less fortunate. And that one campaign did phenomenal for them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So there was 2 questions. Let me just find them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So one person asked, in your class, do you talk about the impact of the impact of COVID-19, like in the business?
Absolutely. So that's one of the first things that we touch on with business fundamentals. And it's actually funny that a lot of people have brought up COVID-19 when we think about the business world, because there's so many different elements to it, right? There's a lot of brick and mortar businesses who are now transitioning to what the digital space looks like and how to market. But there's also that piece on the fact that a lot of consumers have now turned to the digital space as a way to figure out what's the next thing that they're going to purchase, what's the next brand that they're going to support. And so despite the fact that a lot of foot traffic businesses have been halted as a result of this, now is the time that when you're thinking about birthing and creating a new brand that can exist and live in the digital space, now is the time to do that. And truth be told, people are still shopping. People are still spending, whether that be their stimulus checks or people who are frontline workers who still have an income, or people who are currently collecting unemployment who still have an income, or people who have jobs or businesses who still have an income. People are still buying items, right? Because you have to live. People are thinking about self-care, the feeling of being able to purchase something and wait for it to come in the mail, right? People get excited about those types of things. And so similarly, when you even think about some type of service-based business that you have, yes, it's true, you can't necessarily have an in-person session like you would, let's say if you were a coach and someone came into your office physically, but a lot of people are looking for that human connection. And so if there are digital opportunities to create spaces for people to interact, they're buying into that, right? And they want to be a part of that. Similarly with the master classes, and funny enough, the master classes have always been digital. I launched the master classes in 2019, and it's always been an online platform just because I think that's the best way to reach people in this day and age. But similarly, even with that, even more people joined the master classes in 2020, and it's turned into an entire series for the simple fact that people are looking to connect and find others to grow and scale their brands. So all of that to say that COVID-19 has had a bit of a push-pull when you think about the impact of businesses from a consumer perspective, but also from an entrepreneur perspective. And it's really up to you to kind of find that midpoint on where you're able to continue to either grow your sales or kind of grow your reach and your audience based off of the shifts that are happening in the market.
Perfect. And there's one more question, and I believe this one you would answer with your class, but let me not assume. So the person was asking, how do you connect with other orgs of people once you have your brand, you have built your brand? So that's something you will cover in your class, right?
Yeah, that's something that we typically cover in the class, but this is what I will say. Never underestimate the power of a cold email done correctly. Never underestimate the power of research when it comes to finding different media outlets through press releases, etc., to connect and build your brand. And also don't underestimate a good advertisement, right? Depending on what your ask is, people will gravitate. I think that, again, we have this fear of putting out content because people won't engage. But the truth is, you always have to test the content that you're putting out with something, see how people react, and based off of their reaction, you can create more things along that scope that continue to grow the reach, grow the audience, grow the engagement. And so it really is up to you to take that initiative to think about, again, what is the type of brand that you're building? What do people want? How can you meld the two together? And that's something that we cover in the master classes. And as an FYI for the master classes, April's master class dates have passed. So when May 1st hits, the May dates will be posted on the website. But before even scheduling your slot for the class, there's an option to sign up for a 15-minute phone call consultation to talk more about your brand. So I definitely recommend everyone to do that in advance so that we can really have more of that one-on-one conversation on what it is that you're looking to do with your brand, how are you looking to grow and scale it, and then kind of deciding what does that look like as far as the different master classes that would be beneficial to you.
All right, perfect. So I want to move on to a little bit about your nonprofit, but with your brand masterclass, is there anything else that, maybe I didn't ask the question or we didn't get to talk about it, you would like the people to know about your masterclass?
I would definitely say sign up. Sign up, really use it as a resource, right? I think that, again, it's important to take those investments as well into understanding how to grow and scale your brand. And you save a lot more time when you do those initial investments versus kind of spending years making silly mistakes or not just having the strategy in place to be able to activate what it is that you're trying to do. So that's really the extent of it, but definitely feel free to reach out if you're looking to grow your brand, because that's something that I'm passionate about, helping other entrepreneurs do that. So we can definitely make it happen.
Yeah. And one thing I like about your class is that not only the experience, the content that you're giving people and the affordability of it. So it's not only you're giving great content, and from what I know and speaking to people, I've seen people charge $2,000, $4,000 for this stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So you're helping a lot of people. So that's one thing I was amazed about. After like just hearing your you know, your story, looking at what you've done, what you have achieved. And when I went on, I was expecting to see this high point. And I'm like, man, like she's really a social entrepreneur. Like
Yeah.
you have a business, but you want everybody to be able to get this information. So I know I would say thank you, because I know exactly the amount of people, especially in the communities that I grew up with. And I was born in America, but I grew up in Guyana, South America. So I'm from the Caribbean also, and my mom is Trinidadian. Yes.
Okay.
So to move to your nonprofit, so you say you help women. So like, where do you women and girls, right? So where are you like you target like your focus on in that area of helping women?
Yeah, so taking a step back when thinking about We Believe, so our audience that we work with, it's girls as young as 9 years old, all the way up to women in their professional careers. So we have events throughout the year curated for women and girls, focused on everything from how to become an entrepreneur, actually, how to scale and grow your brand, women in businesses, but we also do women in activism, right? And so it really is a community more than anything of women leaders who are committed to reaching back, and a community of change makers who are being a part of the movement, and being a part of creating spaces for girls to, one, first and foremost, heal when it comes to a lot of the conversations that we have with young girls about trauma, about domestic violence, about all of the things that we hear about in society that typically don't go addressed, right? And so it's like, how do we first and foremost recognize that before you can even talk about leadership when it comes to women and girls, you have to talk about trauma, and you have to talk about a lot of the undoing of social constructs that have made it so that women and girls don't feel like they have a seat at the table, or don't feel like their voices should be heard, and that there's not a place for them at the table. And so we deconstruct all of that to ultimately create spaces for girls to learn. We work with the Department of Education on providing after school programs. We even do in-school programs with different principals in the New York area from a national executive team lens. But we also have our chapters across the country. We train them to focus on cultural competency, on understanding childhood trauma, on partnering with different educational institutions to be able to go into after school agencies, go into schools and provide leadership development programs to young girls. And then again, we work with companies, we work with women leaders, we launch different campaigns. We actually have a campaign coming up in a few days focused on girls leadership, based off of our tour that we actually did in March, where we traveled to different schools providing leadership development workshops to young girls. And so we'll be debuting that in May, close to like National Giving Day and like all of these things that are coming out. But it really is a movement more so than it is an organization, is what I like to tell people, because there's so many different ways for you to get involved, and there's just like so much that we do as far as impact. But it really comes down to, how do we prepare young girls to understand their power as leaders and make sure that they can be the change makers that they want to see. And so that is the extent, right, of our work. And so we'll be expanding internationally this year. We have 20 chapters right now. We'll be expanding to 50 chapters. So that's going to be a super exciting time for us as an organization and just continuing to do the work. One of our oldest chapters is at Howard University. One of our younger chapters is in New York, Brooklyn College, right, recently formed. So we are at city campuses. We are at private institutions. We are at HBCUs. We're all over.
Okay, no, that's amazing, and it's true. 'Cause my parents have a two daycares in Guyana, South America, and from there, just the parents, the young parents, like it's almost like it's a counseling session for the parents also.
Yeah.
And my mom always tells me, once you see something wrong with the kids, it always goes back to their parents, and a lot of times it's a trauma that they have been through.
Absolutely.
So it's very, very important. I know definitely in the Caribbean and even more so in the United States. So once again, thank you on that. So something else about what I noticed. So you have recently been named 30 under 30 Caribbean emerging leaders.
Yes,
So
I
how?
2019.
Thank you. So what does that involve? Like,
Yeah.
is that, from your success and your mom is from the Caribbean, like how, what does that involve for you to get that? And is there anything that you have to do moving forward for the year?
Yeah, so it really looks like staying on top of things. I mean, so I was nominated, and because my parents are from Jamaica, I'm Caribbean American, and for me, it's actually funny because when I even thought about, right, being 30 under 30 Caribbean Americans, what came to mind immediately was a few years ago when as an organization, we believe one of the things that we did was a school drive in Jamaica. I'm going to say it was about 4 years ago. It was a long time ago, where we raised funds and we had a back to school drive, like books, pencils, things of that sort, that we did through We Believe in my mom's parish back in Jamaica, in Manchester. And that was a moment for me of just recognizing the fact that when you think about movement building, when you think about creating a sustainable platform and organizations and things of that sort, there are always opportunities to connect it to something bigger. And so this was even before We Believe was going international at this point, because we had no idea, even just like from a perspective of being able to think about curriculums that can be applicable to like different countries and regions, right, and life experiences. And so how can we teach people in different areas what that looks like? But when you think about the overall impact of the organization, and when you think about the work that I do and things that are near and dear to me, it always ties back to my story, right? It always ties back to being first generation American, to being the daughter of immigrants, because I don't think that you can talk about your own growth as a leader, your own growth as an entrepreneur, without recognizing, like you said earlier, right, your story. And so with 30 under 30 Caribbean Americans, I had to go to DC for a weekend and receive the award, and was connected to a bunch of other trailblazers who are Caribbean American, who are just doing incredible work. Some around reproductive justice, some around like transgender rights, right, LGBTQ issues in the Caribbean, which is a huge problem. A lot of people around like domestic violence and things of that
Yes,
nature.
that's
And
huge. Yeah.
so definitely huge. And so it was just great to be surrounded by people who similarly, right, we're on a mission of creating change, but just in all of these different fields. And so we'll continue to do that work, and I'm excited to see what the 2020 class is looking like, because it's important. And I think being able to have a community of Caribbean Americans as well who are also creating this change, that's also important, just for the simple fact that it can be overwhelming, right, being in this type of industry and doing the work that we do, especially with We Believe. It's a lot. From our chapters, like national campaigns, like partnerships that we're doing with different brands and companies, it's a lot of, I'm not even going to say weight to necessarily carry, but it's a lot of initiatives and time and energy and emotional capacity. And so when you are connected with other people who are creating change on a huge scale, it kind of shows you that it can be done and that you do have that support system. So I think that just kind of ties back to the importance of, again, what I said earlier about like having a team, having a tribe, having people who can kind of support you throughout your entrepreneurship journey. And I know that looks different for everyone, but for sure, that definitely was an incredible moment in 2019.
All right, perfect. So going back to the nonprofit, if someone is like listening and they're like, man, this is something I need, like I need help, or I would love to, help out, or they know some other young girls that should be connected to this, what's the best way for them to connect to you on the base of the nonprofit?
Yeah, of course. So our website is www.womeneverywherebelieve.org, and then also on my own personal website, www.thechelseamiller.com, you will see a link that'll take you directly to Women Everywhere Believe, the work that we do, our chapters, information on getting involved, where to donate, et cetera, as well as like our social media handles and things of that sort. My social media handle is at the Chelsea Miller, which also has links to We Believe. So a lot of different ways that you can connect with us.
All right, perfect. So, before this interview ends, I have to ask you about working in the Obama administration, right? I believe you did like social justice, criminal justice, right?
Yeah.
Criminal justice reform and urban economic improvement. So how was that? How was that experience at such a young age too?
Yeah, so I was actually one of the youngest interns to work in the Obama White House. And it's actually so funny because I tell people all the time that that was my second time applying to actually work in the White House. The summer before I had applied, and I think I was waitlisted or something like that. And by that time I was like, well, I need to go back to school. So clearly I'm going to have to kind of like defer or whatever. And then I applied again, and this was in 2016 during the elections. And I literally found out about 5 days before I was supposed to return to Columbia for the fall semester of my junior year. And so I literally had to make a decision in the span of like 24 hours on whether or not I was going to continue with school that semester, or if I was going to pack up all my things from New York and move to DC to intern at the White House, keeping in mind that this is the last opportunity, right, for me to do so. And
yeah.
I made the decision to go, and so I left to move to DC, and it was definitely by far one of the most impactful, and as far as from like a growth perspective, when I think about my activism and just social entrepreneurship journey, it connected me to so many incredible people, so many thought leaders. As an intern class, we did get the opportunity to meet Obama. He always meets with the intern classes, really dropping gems and just sharing his journey of leadership and the advice that he would give to us. And we also got to meet with Michelle Obama as well before we left, and she's just incredible and spent hours just talking with us.
I know Barack was president, but Michelle Obama is my favorite.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, it's Michelle. Like, who doesn't love Michelle? So yeah, it was an incredible experience. I was able to really support with a lot of the events that were even taking place, that organizations were coming to the White House looking to find ways to continue to scale and grow things like My Brother's Keeper, right? Outside of just the Obama presidency, how can we make sure that this lives on in communities? And so there was just so many levels of understanding the importance of course, politics, but also the fact that at the end of the day, when it comes to the work, that will always live with and in the people. And so it's really important that you equip them with the tools that they need to continue to sustainably create change in their communities.
Yes, no, that's good. I'm thinking that around the same time you were there, I was able to get a tour of the West Wing. I toured both. Yeah, one of my good friends, she worked for the Obama campaign in North Carolina. So from that, she met someone that worked in the White House, and they signed us up for a tour, which was nice.
That's awesome.
A lot of people don't know The West Wing is very small. I didn't realize how small it was. Like,
Small. It is pretty
huh?
small. Yeah, it is pretty small. The
I,
biggest building is the EEOB, the Executive Office Building, and that's where all of the staff is. And then across from there is the West Wing, which is, like you said, pretty small. And it really is only like top officials who work over there, senior officials. And then of course there's the president's office. So
yeah. So like that's one thing. I was like, whoa, and then I remember the White House been there for so many years, right? So but that was a good experience. Yeah. So is there anything else before I end? Because I do have one more question, but I don't want to ask that. Do you want, to tell the audience? Because you have a lot. You have your nonprofit, your business. Definitely, if they go to your website, they could see your clothing line also, right?
yeah, of course, everything's on there to make everyone's life easier.
I already caught my wife looking through it already, dropping me hints like, whoa, like, so it must be good because my wife was like, in there. She's like, this is nice. I'm like, all right. Yeah. So before I end, is there anything you want to say before I ask you the last question?
Not necessarily. I think the biggest thing that I would say for the entrepreneurs who are listening in right now is that I really think that, especially during this time, there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of frustration with what's going on, kind of feeling as though a lot of things are out of your control. And I would say that in the midst of all of that, kind of take a step back and really think about who you are, right? Absent of your business, absent of your ventures or anything like that, but who you are as a person. Where are the places and the spaces where you thrive in as an individual? And how do you want to continue to thrive despite what is going on? And the reason why I say that is because a lot of people, when COVID-19 first happened, a lot of influencers immediately started creating content. And then there were influencers who were like, I'm depressed and I actually have zero type of content energy that I want to put out right now. And then there were people who was like, I just want to take a step back and process all of this. And so in the midst of a world where everyone thinks that they are in some type of productivity race, it's okay to take a step back, but just make sure that when you do take that step back, that you come out even harder and that you come out swinging, that you come out with that incredibly unapologetic, dope idea that the world needs. Because the truth is, the world does need you, and it doesn't matter if there are 500 other organizations or companies or brands doing the same thing that you're doing. No one is you, right? And that is your power. And so just tap into that and kind of push through those difficult times, because you will definitely surprise yourself when it comes to entrepreneurship and your brand journey.
All right, perfect. So thank you. So the big question is, when you eat cereal, what goes into the bowl first? The cereal or the milk?
Do you want to know why I think this is such a funny question? Because I'm lactose intolerant. And so the answer to that is I don't eat cereal. But which comes first? I'm going to have to say the cereal. Because
yes,
how much cereal is in there, Was that right?
Exactly. Yeah. Me too. Like we use like almond milk, coconut milk, or whatnot. Yeah, but yeah, because apparently there's a big movement, and there's some people that do milk first, and I'm like, why do you do milk first? So I said, you know what? For all my interviews, I'm gonna ask that question at the end.
I also just isn't gonna splash up if you put the milk first before the cereal, because the milk will splash once the cereal drops in there. I don't know. All that to say, I would think in my head it would be the cereal first.
Cereal, yes, that is. So I just want to say thank you so much for taking this time. Just from you speaking and saying everything you do, I know to take this time to sit with me for almost an hour, I really, really appreciate it. I just want to let everyone go to her website and check it out. The content is amazing, and you for yourself see that she's very experienced. So definitely go to her website. I think I might be contacting you because I would love to try to see down the road if we could do something like this in Trinidad and Guyana, or either or, for the young girls over there. But thank you Thank you. And I'm sure my wife is going to be buying something soon.
Love to hear the support. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and thank you for creating this platform, right, for people to be able to learn and understand the different avenues that they can take with entrepreneurship and just growing their brand. So this is incredible, the space that you've created for that, especially in the midst of all of this. So thank you for taking an hour out of your time as well to be able to create this space for folks, because I've just been kind of like taking a look at the comments, and it's clear that you're impacting people. So that's important.
Yes, thank you. And what you said earlier, just stories. I feel like a lot of people, they have ideas, and some senses they know what to do, but they just don't have the motivation to do it. So I just felt, and my wife has one also, but if we give a platform for people to hear other people's success and how they started. Everything wasn't easy, but hear their success and what they went through, it might motivate them to go and do the same. So that's put it out. So I'm thankful once again for you to come out here, and even more so, you know, British Caribbean people.
Yes.
Yes. So thank you very much. So
Yes.
hopefully we could do this again. I'm down the road.
We definitely will. Stay in touch and stay safe.
Yes, I will. I know you're in New York, so you stay safe.
Yeah, thanks. I will.